What is it about Jeffrey Epstein that's so infuriating to people, so infuriating that it's actually causing seismic political problems? And I hope that they'll address it and it'll get better. I really do. But what is it? I'll tell you what it is. It's the frustration of normal people watching a certain class of people get away with everything every single time. That's what it is. And that drives me absolutely bonkers. By the way, it's one of the things that bothers me about immigration. You know, as someone who got arrested in Syracuse, New York as a kid because I had an expired driver's license and brought to a cell, I'm watching people come, that actually happened. I have done time, it does change a man. Yes, I joined a gang. But I watch, 60 million people come into the country illegally or overstay their fake refugee status or whatever. I mean, the whole thing's a scam. And they get housing vouchers and free education and free cell phones and plane tickets. It's like, wait a second. Not only are they not getting punished for breaking American law, as I would and have, they're getting rewarded for it. The unfairness of it drives you crazy. And it's particularly galling in the case of Jeffrey Epstein and the whole constellation of people around Jeffrey Epstein, all of whom seem to be getting away with scams. And how do you know they're getting away with scams? I'll tell you how, because they're useless and they're rich. So how do you come to a place where some of the least impressive, most useless people who have no actual skills become billionaires? How's that legitimate? And by the way, if you ask this question, at least in Washington, it's like, oh, well, yeah, it sounds like you're a socialist. Sounds like socialism. Yeah, okay, I'm a socialist now. All right. I was a Qatari agent or a bigot. Now I'm a socialist. All right. Leaving aside my committed socialism, can you answer the question? How did Bill Ackman get $9 billion? Bill Ackman, a pretty impressive guy? I know Bill Ackman. No. Bill Ackman's like well-connected and super aggressive. That's it. And I think, well-connected, super aggressive people deserve a fair living like everybody else. But if you're accruing $9 million just because you're willing to do anything, I don't know why we have to pretend that's good. How did Epstein get 4 Gulf Streams? How did he get an island, a massive ranch in New Mexico, the biggest house in New York? Like, what is that? Like, at some point, the basic economics really matter. And they matter because not that it's bad that rich people are getting richer, it's bad that everyone else is getting poorer. And it's especially bad that young people can't afford homes. Let me just put a very precise point on this. If you want a measure of how your economy is doing, I personally favor eliminating GDP as a measure. I don't even know what that is. It's clearly not relevant. They tell me Japan has a stagnant GDP. Have you been to Tokyo? It's the single most radicalizing experience you'll ever have because it's just so nice. You lost the war? Really? Can we lose a war and wind up like this? GDP. No. I don't know what even that is. The total economic activity. Oh, no. My measure is really simple. I got a bunch of kids. Can they afford houses with full-time jobs at like 27, 28? And the answer is no way. And the answer is that 35-year-olds with really good jobs can't afford a house unless they stretch and go deep into debt. And I just think that's a total disaster. That's a complete disaster. Why? 2 reasons. One, if people don't own things, they don't feel ownership of the country they're in. And the country gets super volatile because people feel like they've got nothing to lose. When you have a lawn, trust me, you're thinking long term. Second, it's really hard to have a family without a house. It is. It's like super fun to live in an apartment if, there's like a bar downstairs, you're in a cool neighborhood. I'm in East Village. It's so cool. Try to have 3 kids. You're not going to have 3 kids there. You can't. Nobody wants to raise their kids in that neighborhood. Nobody wants to raise their kids in an apartment. People do it because they have to. Nobody wants to. People want a little house, not some McMansion, just a little normal house. That is the actual American dream. And that is what is totally unattainable for young people. The only young people in general that you will ever meet who have houses are young people whose parents help them. And God bless their parents. That's a perfectly great thing to do for your kids. But most people's parents can't afford to do that because they're already in debt from their pointless college degree. So that is a national emergency. And I know that there are certain cable channels that are spending all this time talking about, they're about to elect a socialist in New York City, which obviously I'm opposed to it. He's not even a real socialist. He's like a trainee vax, rich kid liberal guy. Mom Donnie. He's a fake leftist, but whatever. Why do you think that's happening? One of the reasons it's happening is because normal people with normal jobs no longer believe they can win in this system. and that all the money is going to the worst people. And no one even stops to ask, what the hell is going on? How did Bill Ackman get so rich? I mean, I know he went on CNBC and talked down Herbalife. Bet against companies by driving down their stock prices. That's what he's been accused of. I'm not accusing him here because he's sue me if I do. I'm just suggesting others believe that might have happened. He's already threatened to sue me for saying that. But there are plenty of people who do that. And I'm not saying even that it should be illegal. What I'm saying is that our leadership class should say something about it and should assign a moral value to it. And if you're getting rich by loaning money to people at incredibly high interest rates, that's something you're going to have to talk to God about. That is not good. That is not virtuous. That's disgusting. And the fact that nobody feels free to say that, nobody feels like you can just say 30% on a credit card? Why is anybody paying a credit card bill? I said to somebody recently, I feel like I'm very moderate and sensible and, well, yeah, that's what they used to call it. It was forbidden. I said to someone recently, we really need a political party where people just it's the, hey, I'm not paying my credit card bill party. And let's just bring down Citibank. Just not permanently, maybe permanently. But credit card debt is the single biggest cause of human suffering that I'm aware of in the United States. It's not Iran. Iran's not doing that. Oh, you, a tool of the Ayatollah. No, I'm actually Episcopalian, not Shiite. Not a tool of the Ayatollah. I'm just very committed to observing physical reality and drawing my conclusions from that. I'm what we call a physicalist. I believe in the things right in front of me, the things I can touch and smell. And the people I can touch and smell are suffering not from Iran, not from Qatar. They're suffering from their credit cards and their inability of their kids to buy a house. Yeah. I don't think Dan Crenshaw is sold on this. Dan Crenshaw believes our threats are in other countries. Okay, they may be, but how are they bigger than credit card interest? So I suggest to this person, who's a really good guy, I was like, hey, why don't we start, I'm not going to pay my credit card bill party, or I'm not going to pay my mortgage. Because they always say, if the very rich, if you borrow enough from a bank, you're kind of in charge of the bank because they need you to pay them back. So they're totally happy to negotiate terms with you. But if you borrow a little bit from the bank, they'll just take your house away. So what if people got together and just decided, wait a second, 30% interest is a lot, especially since they're pushing credit cards on kids like crack. And I know that conservatives are always like, well, it's your fault if you don't pay back the credit card. Yeah, okay, it's my fault, but maybe it's a little bit their fault too. They're pushing this crap on kids. So I say to this guy, maybe just people get together, not like everybody, but just a couple million people are not going to pay our credit cards and just bring the bank to its knees, and the CEO weeps on television, they readjust it down a little bit. And he goes, oh, no, that's radical. That's too radical. And I'm like, I don't think I'm very radical. I think I'm very moderate, super moderate. I hate change. My parents got divorced. I hate change. I like things to be exactly the same every day. I'm not radical. What I am is very worried that if we don't do something really soon, we're going to wind up like New York City. That there's going to be actual radicalism. And that radicalism will take very unhelpful forms. And you're going to see race and ethnic hatred that's real. And that you're going to see people behaving in hard to control ways. If you deny people what they actually want long enough, and instead substitute things that you claim they should want, like bombing Iran. I'm not for Iran, where you spend all day telling me that it's so important that, boys not playing girls' soccer teams, whatever. I agree. I hate the tranny stuff passionately. I think you should keep the boys off girls' soccer teams. But I don't know. It kind of feels like you're feeding me appetizers. At some point, I want to look around and see a better country. I want to see a country I recognize. I don't want to see people sleeping on the sidewalk. I don't want to see people ODing on drugs. I want to know where those drugs coming from. Why can't you stop it? You've got the U.S. military. Don't you have SEAL Team 6? What are they doing today? Don't you have Delta Force? You could give me another segment about how impressive the U.S. military is? I believe you. Why aren't they employed to make my country better? Why are my cities disgusting? I don't even want to go there. It smells like weed and halal food. And you're lecturing me about how it's a great moral victory that I kicked the boys off the girls' soccer team. Good, I'm so glad. But let's do the real stuff, like making New York livable and create an economy where my kids can have kids. How about this? How about we just make the measure really super simple? Can my children have without the benefit of like the great luck I have had, can they have a roughly approximate life that I had? Or how about just a middle-class life? Can they like get married young, as I did, and like have 4 kids and, take a couple jobs, work hard and all that stuff? But in the end, it's like, fine. Can they do that? Or is that like so remote a possibility that you need to tell me that Iran is the real threat to take my mind off the fact that you stole all the money and screwed up my country beyond recognition? So I guess what I would say before I have an actual aneurysm is, unless we say to the people in charge, we are going to determine what's important, you need to listen to us, your voters, about what we actually care about. I'll take a lecture for about 10 minutes. I can do that. I went to school. I'm used to sitting there and being like, oh, yeah, okay, the Axis powers, that's so important. Thank you for telling me. I can take a lecture for about 10 minutes, and they're like telling me Iran is the greatest sponsor of terrorism. Okay, that's great. I hate Iran. Got it. But at some point, I want to pipe up and say, yeah, but what are you going to do about Union Station in Washington, D.C., which is filled with passed out drug addicts with spreading urine stains? Like, it wasn't that way. I was here. How did that happen, and why aren't you fixing it? And by the way, if you don't fix it or even acknowledge it, dude, bad things could happen. Like, wake up. Time is to wake up out of your freaking fantasy world where you think telling the rest of us to shut up is enough. If you keep doing that, this could go in dark direction. So I think it's so important for every person to look around and make your own decisions about what's important. What's important to you? What around you in your life? What do you see in your family, among your friends, in the town that you live in that's going wrong? Those are the biggest problems. Not what some shill on television is telling you your biggest problems are. He can shut up, but he won't. But look around. What's the biggest problem in your life? And if you're burdened by a car loan or some credit card payment you can never actually make, if you can't afford to make the full payment on your credit card 2 months in a row, that's a crisis, okay? That's a crisis. If you're in the hole to DraftKings to a point where you can't pay, I'm serious. These are huge problems, and most of them are money related. And if they're not solved, you're not getting married, and you're not having children, and you're not going to have a happy, fulfilling life, period. And they tell you, oh, it's all about values. Yeah, okay, values. You can't afford a house? I don't care what your values are like. You're not having 4 kids in an apartment. So you need to be heard on that. And anyone who tells you, oh, shut up, racist, hoist the middle finger and tell them, keep talking to me that way, pal, and we'll punish you. Anyway, sorry, excuse me.